Okay, I want to make a, a comment about what I have realized in, in African thought these days. There's a great awakening to the fact that religion is all a deception. Some writer or some commentator, well, he says Africa doesn't need to embrace Christianity nor Islam, which he considers are the two main scourges of the African continent. And there is he advocates for the creation of or for the refinement of traditional African concepts about life and the beyond. For instance, I listened to the president of Benin. Benin was speaking in French, and he advocates voodoo. The Beninois, the African, as he says it, is a practicer. He practices voodoo, and advocates that Africa should go back to their roots in order to be actually free. They shouldn't be ashamed of what they were practicing. They should go back to it and sell it, refine it, and sell it to others, rather than just be consumers of religious ideas or spiritual ideas. Meanwhile, the voodoo culture, it originated from Benin, from West Africa. It was taken over to the Caribbeans by the slaves. You have Haiti, and you have other Caribbean nations that practice voodoo as a form of relation with the beyond. So I see this as a great opportunity, because people are already beginning to realize that they have been living in deception, and they're trying to get out of it, and looking for ways to do so. And this is where the new presentation comes in handy to help this kind of people, especially in a country like Benin, which is the home of voodoo. So, what do you think about Africans embracing voodoo, Duane, as a form of religion that substitutes Christianity, Islam? Can it be a stepping stone? Yeah.
No, I'm glad you asked that. I see what you're saying. I would do this first, and that is that everybody has their idea. Voodoo has come around. Now, it can be like anything that had its benefit at the time, or its culture, like the so-called witch doctors. But that was a term created, wasn't it, by the white man to, put a criticism on what has taken place? I would say it is. They weren't witch doctors, okay, or witches. Yeah. But then again, the idea of witches, where did that come from? Again, there's good witches, there's bad witches, and there are those who are thought to be witches that really, they just dealt with herbs and healing people thinking that they were witches, where, the so-called doctors of the day, they were doing bloodletting and all these weird things, again, like the medical stuff of today. And so I would say do a real research just for the fun of it and look at the real side, which you're shown. And what is the original idea of voodoo? What is it really? I'm going to throw this in here too, and that is that the church has set up the idea that the devil is Lucifer. Well, guess what? I know a real side gal that has real experiences with Lucifer, and he's not the bad guy at all. He was set up to be the bad guy, just like Gaddafi and everyone else, you see. And that's what they try to do with Paul, too. Oh, he plagiarized, he did this and that, he was this and that, etc. Doesn't matter what you say. And it is not, Lucifer is not the devil. He's actually doing really cool things on the real side. But again, that's the marketing ploy of this world. So now that you mentioned this, and I have written things on voodoo religion, here's what I would suggest, and that is that do not use the religious idea with anything, etc., simply because it has become so distorted, because it basically deals with worshiping and praying to deities that were created by Inky, really by the reptilians, to keep people slaves. But to really take a look at and just give a commentary. But here's the idea. It's not about going back, you see. It's not about going back. It's about being real now. And yes, now you have the challenge because it's come into your awareness. And just like in the movie City Slickers, where Jack, he kicked the bucket, and now the City Slicker dudes had the cattle there. What are they going to do? Leave them there? No, they got to drive the herd, and they did. See, they took the risk. So you have it's come to you, Charles. You see this, and this is why I introduced you. You have Africa. You have the challenge. So you get to be like I do with all of creation, and that is that you get to have the privilege to step up and risk your life to see if you can figure this out the best you can while you're still here and create relationships as to how and what makes sense. And it's not about going back. It's about being real now. And so again, with the New Vessel Project, what I see is, of course people have to live somewhere and do something, but to have fun, because I'm a general contractor too, and this is, I'm a builder, and I build things, I create things. And so one of the fun things I would really like to do is in Africa, because I really like the Africans, I really do. It's a great adventure, is to build self-sustaining communities and see how naturally we could build them, even if they look like huts and log cabins out of bamboo and hemp and whatever. What does it matter? It's a cool lifestyle to live among. For me, it's living on the beach with the palms and, the tropical look and all the greenery, etc. That's my ideal, and to do these things. So you have the challenge, and I introduced this. I set this up because I took the risk to meet these people, and I've met the so-called top people in the world. I really have. But I can't tell everybody about it simply because they wouldn't understand it. Besides, most people will want to destroy it, and that's just how people are. They're duh. They really are duh. They really are stupid. Because they get to the point of, it's not only competition to see who can make more money or get better. It gets to the point of destroying everything to where one person is the conqueror and owns nothing. This is where we're at. So once they've destroyed everything, they can say, oh, gee, I conquered it all. But you have nothing. And that's where it's going. So that's the idea of introducing you to these people because they said to me, we've developed these relationships in basically 22 countries. So you see what's going on. But again, now to provide, it's not about the new presentation so much. It's not about that. You don't have to bring that in. I wouldn't. I would simply imply, hey, let's take a look at the natural environment and what's taking place now. Let's be real about it now. Let's do something about it now. and start from there. And eventually, the worldwide educators come in and what we're presenting to the world, you see? But start with the basics: food, water, housing, air, etc., the basics. And housing is in there, etc. But you know what? When Ava and I have done images and presented them out there, you know, it's funny when Ava and I were, when I first said, well, I want some images of Africans. I wanted to use, I forget now what image we created months and months and months ago, and many over the years. And so the first thing that she brought up was the city, the housing, looks like Orange County, etc. And I said, no, that isn't what I want. I said, I want the real Africans, the ones that live in villages, that walk on the dirt, where you see all the children together playing, and they're all happy all the time, you know. And it's not about happiness, but they're real. That's the real Africa. Yeah, that's how I see it. Yeah, and so I'm not saying that we should go back to that, but technology can be implemented also, but to make sense of it and have fun with it at the same time. A lot of people like camping out. I sure do. I don't need a building around me all the time, or other buildings, etc. No. So again, you get to have the challenge, and I would say, just for the fun of it, look up the real idea of voodoo, instead of thinking that it's bad. So just by the fact that you brought this up, I see something else here that's possible, and I would investigate it and kind of bring that hint in, but at the same time bring it all into right now, what is taking place on the earth. So again, trying to go back to and those are just ideas. Everybody is living as they are. They're not going to just walk from their houses. They're not going to mow down their houses or their lifestyle to change. These are ideas in people's minds. And that is that whatever you have now, decide to, see it better, make better choices, create benefits from what you have now. It's not about going back, because, again, those are more or less political statements. Somebody's going to get up there, and just like this fellow said, okay, let's go back to our roots and voodoo and all this stuff and forget the religion, whatever. Really, that's a political statement. And what are they really doing? They're making political statements. And really, what comes of that? Nothing. Just like the politicians, for the most part, nothing comes from it. It usually gets worse because people are thinking along those lines, and they just kind of let it be. And just like the politicians here make statements about the environment and say we should preserve the natural parks and we should do all this stuff and that, they're not doing it. They're not doing any of that. They're destroying everything. They're fracking everything. And out here in California, the fires, that's the U.S., that's the government with lasers setting everything on fire and melting everything. Nobody started those fires. They're doing it. And these are the people that are saying preserve this or that. See, again, these are political speeches. We know what's going on. We are worldwide educators. We see what's going on in the world. We can implement this. So I see that this has come into your arena, your awareness, and you decide to take on the challenge or not. Me, I take on everything. Whatever comes, I do it. Then I give it to Kelsey. So the thing being is then, and she does a great job of implementing it too. So we all share it, or I give it to Val. And so this is where I got them out there. We'll probably do 1,000 meetups next month. These kids are going to be very busy. But anyhow, I see that you have this challenge to decide to take part in it or not, because we only have so much time, and that's real. And then we don't, and then we got a bigger challenge to deal with. So it's only going to become bigger challenges, but right now you have that opportunity. And yes, it is part of the funding. So this is where I brought you in, because as we show up as worldwide educators and everything that we can, it more so reinforces the actuality and the reality of the new projects becoming real in this dimension. You see, all these little things are nuts and bolts and are hinges on the big gates opening up for it to all come through, Charles. So there you have it. I'm glad you brought that up about the people that I introduced you to. I would strongly suggest to follow that and research it, because that can mean a lot as we go along here. So I try to establish every kind of route I can, kind of like FedEx and UPS. You take on as many routes as you can, different ways to get this out there. And so that becomes our adventure for others. And this is really beyond helping others. It's really presenting something real to where they can do it for themselves. It's actually better than helping others, to where they can stand up and they can do it and become self-sufficient. They don't have to depend upon anything. And that's the whole idea of what we're presenting. So I would suggest strongly to follow that. As I become more familiar with Africa and as we have more going on there, I will continually follow that too. But I have to start somewhere that makes sense with what we're doing now, and that will reflect everywhere. So things that come from California, as an example, reflect all over the world. And eventually, when it's ready, we will be there. We will be doing what we're doing, running around like the kids over there. It sounds fun. So, but until then, this is what we're doing, a step at a time. So,
one Bitcoin, my God! Look at the days when Bitcoin they were begging people to buy. I don't know why I just folded my arms and let Bitcoin go to the moon without me owning some. It's terrible.
Well, that's the way of the world, young man. So it's like anything. So again, like the price of gold, I was into gold and silver for a lot of years, for decades actually, and it's all a manipulated market. And the financial systems, it doesn't matter what is said about them. Those are marketing ideas. It's all a manipulated situation, just like the diamonds with the De Beers, etc. The monetary system, prior to the Indians didn't exist. This is all a control factor. And yes, we're in it today. It's fine. We utilize it. Doesn't matter. But it is what it is. So if you got this stock or that or the Bitcoin or whatever, it's all the same thing. There's a bigger view that's always possible. So, but I'm not sure that we went through the process of all that a while back, and it's a little bit complicated, but there is that aspect there too. So you'd make us look good on Lulu if you ordered, 1,000 books with one Bitcoin, Charles. That would be good. You could handle that, right, Kelsey?